Issue 240. We start out with Amy sending a message to Royal Military HQ from Feral Forest, and despite some soldiers being there in the room, nobody answers. This only delays the heroes, as Amy thinks the transmission isn't sending and she tries to send a message through Teapup instead. Rotor activates the force field with his nanite suit just as the death egg closes in on it, making me wonder why this didn't happen last time. Orbot says that the impact with the energy shield happened, and while Tailstall was supposed to have taken care of this sort of thing by now, it had been damaged on deployment, but still reports moving into position. We see it flying the Nanite City power plant shield generator, and all it fucking has to do is make its antenna glow, and then the force field vanishes. I would be fine if they explained the Tailstall as having control over nanites of its own, or magic in it, but instead it's overpowered for seemingly no reason. I mean, it could at least make the force field generator crumble, visibly. With the force field dropped insultingly easily once again, making me wonder why, if Eggman can go attack the city whenever he feels like it, he hasn't destroyed the city by now. Eggman drops some robots into the city for Rotor's team to fight, and Elias's team expresses gratitude that the city's too distracted by all the commotion to notice them fighting. Agent Queen says that they've set up a network of hidden entrances to secret HQ throughout the city. They go into a tree hole, pretty nostalgic, and fall down a slide chute. The Owl Director Who says that Elias's team is established. Lita and Lyko, the twin wolves, who I just have to take his word for it, two of the finest warriors of Mobius, Larry Lynx, and Shard is completely rebuilt. Elias has a disappointing response to these powerhouses, saying that none of these agents aside from Larry have a clear vested interest in the Republic. How cynical is he? Just because they're not from here doesn't mean they wouldn't want to save it. Fortunately, Elias is convinced to trust them, and is ready to fight some robots, as I wonder how they could possibly do that without Ixis or Eggman ever seeing them. It's not like they all have invisibility force fields, and Silver the Hedgehog makes a pretty big impression with his telekinesis. And he would be doing that even if he was invisible. So the Secret Freedom Fighters would make more sense if they were all chameleons, though that would be kind of boring. But at least the chameleons would be doing something to help. Cream screams at a robot and has to have it defeated by Big, and Rotor naturally lampshades that this fight is getting to be too much for her. She apologizes for being scared and is told to guide citizens to the center of the city where the military is setting up defenses. So she can still be useful, good. Ixis tells Rotor that he's here to save him, but after using some magic, he seems to get into a bind thanks to the spirits trapped in his body, which is said to be mutating. This really seems like an unusual and arbitrary change in him. I mean, at least explain that Eggman put nanites in him to make him sick. That would make this more natural than the Genesis way of doing it. Why would what Eggman was doing in the Death Egg Madness affect Ixis? If he made a change of rule to make him like this, why didn't he just kill him outright? Like, they're just arbitrarily forcing him to not be useful against Eggman, even once because he's a bad guy, and bad guys are allowed to be helpful, because that'd give us moral grayness to the situation. The robots close in on them from behind the crystals. Ixis tells Rotor that Eggman's sending a wave to vex him, rather than just explaining everything to him already. And Rotor admits that not saving him from the robots would be treason. Big gets the useless Ixis to the military's perimeter and is told that he should return afterwards. Seriously, this is not how I would imagine Ixis being in the city to be. He would at least be very helpful with his wizard powers. Heavy shows some concern and fear because he doesn't want to get blown up again, and fights some robots after Rotor reassures him. Eggman finds it hard to believe that Rotor's team is keeping the invasion force at the edge of the city, and he decides to launch Metal Amy, Tails, and Knuckles, who Rotor decides to focus on as the bigger threats while leaving the egg swats to the military. So, these guys are swap bots? Why can't they just be, like, actual swap bots? Although I guess that is more original to the comic. Some of the robots get destroyed in what looks like a sewage waterfall with yellowish-orange electricity around it, causing the military men to get confused and wonder if that was really their shot. If this kind of suspicion happens all the time with these guys, I swear. As Rotor's team fights, Larry's thankful for a misfire saving him from a robot, and is doubly thankful for a gun jam defeating another robot. Both are subtle ways to defeat robots that make sense for a secret fighter. The problem is that with Larry and the Wolf Girls being in special suits, how could someone look at them and not realize what they're about? It'd be much less obvious if they didn't insist on wearing uniforms out in public. Then Metal Sonic gets intercepted in another panel just to make it clear what just happened. And Heavy says his sensors couldn't register it fast enough. Then he tells Bomb to watch his language when all I did was make pain sounds. What, does Heavy read his mind and that's how he knows what he's saying? Then Shard irritates me because Metal Sonic explodes right in his face, and he's not even the slightest bit damaged. We just see his arm cannon steaming from shooting at him, but it still blew up at him. And Silver telekinetically keeps Metal Amy still for Big, which Big should really be questioning since whenever Silver does telekinesis on something, it gets surrounded by a very obvious blue aura. Metal Tails gets an arrow sent at its back, and Rotor sends a laser at it to destroy it afterwards. I don't see how the arrow helped. Was it a distraction to make it stop? Well, then we see what's very difficult to recognize as Elliot's holding a ray gun of some kind, so maybe he fired at the same time as Rotor. Eggman throws a tantrum over losing and signals the retreat, and Rotor wonders who is helping them take out the ground forces, with Big of all people just telling him not to worry about it instead of telling him about the blue aura like an actual person would. Well, to be fair, maybe he thought the robot got an aura around it to symbolize that it was charging up an attack. But still, Rotor's suspicious the first time these guys help. Logically, they would be found out pretty quickly. Elliot says he's proud of his team, apologizing for not trusting them, and we end off with Ixis getting an idea about what to do to solve all of its problems. This issue is by Ian Flynn, and it's for the most part pretty reasonable in expecting me to believe the secret freedom fighters weren't spotted defending the city, because Eggman's focus on Rotor's team, who he actually knows about, and they're fighting in ways that are either subtle, like Larry or Elias, or they're alone without witnesses to their more extravagant ways of attacking, like Shard blowing up a robot right in space and somehow not getting damaged at all. But Silver was easily the least subtle. Whenever he uses telekinesis on something, it gets a very obvious blue aura around it, so it's not like he can make that subtle. He only got away with it because Big's an idiot. They could have at least bothered to explain Big's reasoning for what he thought that aura was, like a robot charging up an energy attack. Plus, Silver is probably seen as more of a lone agent by the city, since the city probably knows that the Freedom Fighters hate Silver. So maybe Silver fighting wouldn't arouse suspicion about there being a team that he's part of. Maybe they'd all just think Silver, and Silver alone was the whole reason, was the whole person fighting, and not actually think that the team, like maybe Silver was actually covering for his whole team. Either way, this was a pretty fun issue. Ixis being totally useless and cheat out of helping again aside. Seriously, this is not how I would imagine Ixis being the king in the city to be. So why even make this story if you're not going to... Next up is Sonic Universe 41.